So, most people don't usually think about this, but narcissists have the same access to information as you do. They've seen the content, they've picked up on the lingo, and some are using it to seem more self aware, but they're not actually evolving into better people. They're just getting better at hiding. And maybe you've gotten free, but if you want to stay free, you have to evolve too, starting with the one thing they've always counted on. And we'll get to that. But first, I want to welcome you to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and I help people recover from toxic relationships. And if you think you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, I have a free checklist to help you see how your experience stacks up with the phases of narcissistic abuse. There's a link for that in the description. All right, so let's talk about how we got here. Because the truth is, information has changed the game for everyone. And it's changed it quickly. So, first, let's talk about the pros of all this information. We know that survivors today have access to more information than ever before. There are checklist articles and entire communities built around understanding narcissistic abuse. And because of all of this, people are recognizing the patterns faster. They're also finding language for things that they used to second guess. But this rise in awareness hasn't just helped survivors, it's pushed narcissists to adapt as well. And that's why it's no longer enough for us to avoid the obvious red flags. Because these days, the biggest threat isn't the person who looks toxic from the start. It's the one who says all the right things, but is masking their abusive tendencies underneath it all. And that's where it really gets dangerous. Because when you're dealing with someone who sees self-awareness as some kind of performance art, it's a lot harder to spot what's real. The more survivors catch on to the old patterns, the more narcissists adjust. Now, some of them are using the language of healing to slip under the radar. And at first, it can feel different. So maybe they'll say things like, "You're just acting this way because you have an abandonment wound," which really puts the emphasis on your reaction instead of the fact that they literally abandoned you. Or they might say something like, "I recognize that I have an avoidant attachment style," which would be an amazing insight if they were willing to take the steps to heal it. But if you're dealing with a narcissist 99.99% of the time, they outright refuse. And when you're standing there hearing that, it can really be disarming because this time it sounds like they finally get it. Like all the work you hoped they would do is finally happening. But here's what you need to know. When a narcissist starts speaking this way, it doesn't typically mean they're changing. Most of the time, when you're dealing with a narcissist, it just means they've figured out how to explain their behavior in a way that keeps them from having to take real responsibility. So when they say, "I triggered your abandonment wound," what they mean is you're overreacting. But I understand it's not your fault. It's because you have this abandonment wound. But really, you're blowing this whole thing out of proportion. And when they say, "I have an avoidant attachment style," what they're really saying is, "Don't expect more from me. This is just how I am." They're not using self-awareness to heal the relationship. They're using it to dodge accountability because for them, insight isn't a turning point. It's a tactic. And you can be especially sure it's a tactic if they're also picking up on some manipulation tactic terminology. So if they're suddenly accusing you of gaslighting them, or they come at you with a PowerPoint presentation for all the reasons that you are a narcissist, but all the while they refuse to take any accountability for anything or to make any real lasting change in their own behavior. So if you're in a relationship and somebody is doing this, does that mean that they're a narcissist? Not necessarily. But it does mean that they're not taking accountability for their actions. And what that means is that unless things change drastically, you are going to be the only one who's working on this relationship. And we know that doesn't work. So if you're noticing all this stuff, it doesn't really matter if they're a true narcissist or not. What matters is that their behavior is kind of like a dead end. But really, it's true that narcissists are evolving and they're doing a better job of blending in and hiding behind the right words. But a lot of them are also using technology to up their game. So let's talk about how technology helps them blend in. So you've probably seen it in your own life. Technology makes it easier for everyone to put their best face forward. But for narcissists, it's been a real game changer. It's literally changing their game. So let's start with how they use dating apps. For narcissists, dating apps aren't about connection. They're more like a speed dating machine that's open 24/7. So it's not about finding the right person. It's about sorting options. Who gets cut, who gets breadcrumbed, and who gets promoted to the main supply. And if the person they pick doesn't play along, they just move down the list. And if a narcissist is already in a long-term relationship, dating apps make it super easy for them to line up new supply before they ever leave. So they don't have to face the fear of being alone because they've already planned their next move. And it's not just dating apps that are making a narcissist's life easier. Social media plays a role too. And it's not always what meets the eye. So if someone you just met seems overly careful about what they show you online, or if their social media presence feels thin, inconsistent, or strangely disconnected from what they tell you, it's worth paying attention. These are all red flags that something might be off. We've all heard the stories of people living a double life and having burner accounts on social media. And I talk to people all the time who've dealt with these things in real time. So I can tell you without a doubt, it happens. So up until now, I've kind of painted a picture about how technology has helped to make their lives easier. But there are ways you can use the tools they're not expecting to your advantage. So if narcissists are evolving, you can evolve too, and not by becoming hypervigilant or paranoid. But you can use the same technology they're using, but you can use it to ground yourself instead of losing yourself. So, one of the most powerful tools you have right now is perspective. And sometimes it helps to get a little extra clarity when your emotions are running high. Through coaching, I talk to so many people who have been in relationships with narcissists, and I've been seeing a pattern lately. And that pattern is that plenty of survivors are using AI tools like ChatGPT to unpack conversations that left them feeling confused or second guessing themselves. So essentially, they take that whole conversation and they ask a neutral source to break it down. And sometimes just seeing it written out without the emotional charge makes it easier to spot when something's off. It gives you a second opinion when your instincts are being pulled in different directions. Just be mindful that you're feeding it the facts and not leading with your perspective. Otherwise, you're taking objectivity off the table. So another way you can use technology to your advantage is you can curate your social media feed very intentionally. So follow accounts that reinforce your healing, not accounts that trigger your anxiety or pull you back into old patterns. You don't owe anyone access to your peace, especially not online. And speaking of social media, if you need to go no contact, this is a place that you cannot forget to block people, whether they've ever reached out to you on social media before or not. If you're going full no contact with someone, make sure that they cannot access you online. And you can mute or temporarily unfollow any accounts where there might be some overlap. So mutual friends, where you might end up seeing comments or pictures of this person that you're trying to avoid. Because as technology is evolving, we need to recognize that it's just as important to protect our digital space as our physical one. Because while narcissists are using technology to keep people tangled, you can use it to stay clear. You can use it to help you come back to yourself. And if you find that it's not helpful at all, you can take a break or delete the accounts altogether. You are in complete control of this space. So I've talked to quite a few survivors who were surprised to get roped into another relationship with a narcissist after learning about the red flags. And while I understand their surprise, it's not surprising to me because learning the red flags is not enough, especially today. You see, if you're only focused on spotting danger, you're still making the narcissist the center of the story. And the real way to stay ahead isn't about memorizing a longer list of warning signs. It's about healing the parts of you they've always counted on, the parts that needed their validation, their attention, and their approval. Because that's what they prey on. They don't prey on your intelligence or your kindness. They prey on your unmet needs. And the more you close those gaps, the less you need their approval to feel whole. And the less you need that approval, the less vulnerable you are to the next version of the same trap. Because a narcissist can also study every red flag checklist out there, and they can memorize every healing buzzword. But they can't fake the feeling you get when you're actually standing in your own power. That's the real upgrade. It's not seeing them faster, it's needing them less. So by now, we've talked about how they're using a lot of the terminology and technology to their advantage. And you're probably wondering, it's a question I get all the time, are they doing all of this on purpose? So do they know that they're narcissists? And that's a fair question. And the answer isn't always clear. You see, some narcissists have no real awareness of what they are. They honestly believe their own version of events. And so they don't see themselves as abusive. Instead, they see themselves as misunderstood or even wronged. Other narcissists have enough awareness to know that they're manipulative, or at least to know that they're manipulating when they are. So they recognize that they twist things and push people's limits, but they don't see a problem with it because it gets them what they want. And then there are the narcissists who know exactly what they're doing. They know the damage they cause, but they care more about staying in control than they do about who gets hurt along the way. So, do they know they're narcissists? Maybe, maybe not. But in the end, it doesn't matter. Whether it's calculated or automatic, the impact on you is the same. It leaves you doubting yourself, questioning your reality, and blaming yourself for things you didn't cause. And that's why the focus can't just be about figuring out how aware they are. It has to be on staying aware of yourself and trusting what you see, even when they try to make you question it. So, none of this is about living in fear about narcissists evolving or who might be hiding what. It's about trusting yourself more than you trust the performance. And it's about growing in a direction that they can't follow. And if you're tired of feeling stuck in your own thoughts and questioning everything that happened, wondering if you missed something, make sure you watch the next video. I'll break down why survivors get caught in those thought loops and how you can finally start moving forward.